Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's.
Merry Christmas.
It seems like it's been a little while since we've sat down together, but welcome back, our listeners, to the ThriveIN podcast. I hope you're watching because you just got to see Alex and Christine smile at each other. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes there's a side eye or a roll of an eye, but it's what it is.
It's on my list of things to improve on for 2026, my facial expressions.
This is the perfect episode.
I just feel bad. Those that don't get to be around Christine and I very often, the appreciation that I have for Christine. And if all you do is listen to the podcast, you still may not pick up on it. But my understanding is if you watch the podcast, you can see my facial expressions may not always reflect that. So that's one of my things to work on for 2026.
Stop it. You don't think that the people listening probably have the same facial expression that you do when I go off on my own tangent? They're relating to your emotions in those moments.
Well, today, I think our listeners are in for some fun. We are going to do a little recap on 2025, both personally for ourselves, and this is the first year of the ThriveIN podcast, and we're getting ready to wrap it up. Last episode, so we'll talk about some of what the learning curve that we've had, some stumbles that we had, some bloopers. I don't know. We're going to have some fun though, and I don't know. It's just I can't really wrap up 2025 other than to say it was just phenomenal. I mean, it really was, both personally and professionally, and then to have this on top of it. So
I agree.
Glad you guys were part of it.
This was definitely a lot more fun than I knew it was going to be rewarding, but it has been a lot more fun.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed the studio time when we get to be all together and then talk about our episodes together too.
We're also going to, if our listeners listen to our last episode, last group episode, where we announced the big prize packages that we gave out, the 5 packages, we're going to announce the winners during this episode as well. So that'll be exciting. You can also find that on our Facebook, ThriveIN, where they released and covered the actual drawing. So you can watch it yourself if you would like to. But congratulations to all those winners. We'll talk about that here coming up. And of course, if you listen to our last group episode, you know that Christine had kind of centered this whole episode on the movie
Christmas Vacation.
And I've been doing my homework. So I sat down on a Saturday and I watched Christmas Vacation.
Yeah,
and
you did.
I also watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It had been a very long time, but I'm not afraid to admit that I laughed from the very, very beginning. Just had a ball.
So good.
Yeah.
It is definitely one you don't watch with your whole family. There are some moments in there that you don't watch with your whole family, but it is so good.
PG.
13.
Yeah.
PG-13.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some 13 moments.
So many one-liners that I forgot that you'll recognize some of them. Like you'll be like, that's where that came from. Movie references that just kind of over the last 40 years have just kind of they lost the reference, but they're still here. And
I don't know what your New Year's resolutions are for sure, Alex.
Other than my facial expressions.
Yeah, you've got that one.
Yep.
I'm going to not sigh at you and be appalled when you haven't seen something. But I hope to encourage you to add that to your list over the holiday break to watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And then give us your rating and review on what you think, if you laughed.
What streaming platform do I have to purchase to watch that movie?
We own it on DVD.
she's going to loan it to you.
You don't have a player, I'm sure. What did you watch it on?
It might have been, I don't know, HBO. I don't know. I really don't know.
It's worth it, even if you have to rent it for $3.99. It's worth the $3.99.
Of all the subscribing opportunities that are out there, hopefully our listeners are subscribed to our podcast. It's the most inexpensive of all the opportunities.
Free.
Free.
And worth every penny.
Should we start off with the winners of our prize package?
Sure.
Okay. In addition to watching the movies, I've also been working on my pronunciation of the big package. So I'm excited. Alex, are you going to try that as well?
I'll let you go.
Okay. All right.
I'll let you know how you do.
Well, we had, just to remind our listeners, we had 5 packages. The first one was the Family Fun package. And Christine, do you remember who won that one?
I'm pretty sure it was Becky Arnett.
That's right.
Yeah, she was really excited about to be able to use that package with her family and grandkids.
And that one had things like Volt Family Fun, the trinkets, and then Wabash County Museum. So I'm sure with her grandkids, that'll be absolutely perfect for them. And then we had the adventure package, which was Marcia Hensley. And the adventure package included Alley Cat, JP Performance, Bass and Bucks, and Etna Acres. So another phenomenal package that was valued at $190. And then we had the date night. And I know you know who won the date night, Christine.
Yeah, it was Crystal Lester. Yeah, she was so excited to. She's been a dedicated listener for a very long time, and her family, they actually stream it and watch it at home on their TV on YouTube, which is pretty cool too.
Together as a family.
Yeah, as a family.
They have a young son that goes to Northfield, runs cross country. I've been to cheer him on a couple of times.
Super into robotics. Loved the Ailey and Randy episode that we did regarding the fellows, and of course they speak about the robotics program.
And Billy participates in the My Team Triumph with me, and that we covered that episode earlier this season. So that was really cool.
That's great.
I'm sure they're going to enjoy that.
For sure.
And then we had the Shop Local winner, which was Christy Clark.
And she popped in. She's so excited to see the new stores inside the Coop. She hadn't been to 9, and so we were just talking about how incredible the Coop is and the shops that are curated in that space, as well as the other, cottage creations in North Manchester. But she was really excited about that package.
Yep. And since our last recording, actually, I got to go to an event at the Coop, and it was an evening event open for Christmas shopping. Really cool space. If you haven't been there, that is worth the trip to Manchester. And Alex, you work right by there.
126 East Main Street in North Manchester. And just a little background on that project. I was the board chair of Manchester Live for a couple years. Through some transition, that being one of the transition pieces, and now to see the Coop come to life has been really, really exciting. I would just say that Manchester Live is the Chamber of Commerce and Main Street organization up in North Manchester. And there's an episode with Heather Cruz where you really dive in, Christine, to a lot of the great work that she's done and that organization continues to do. But I remember being in the room when we first talked about the concept of selling this office building just on the outskirts of downtown, purchasing this large building that had been nothing but thrift store after thrift store, primarily in the heart of downtown North Manchester, to now see what the Coop has become. Heather Cruz, the executive director at Manchester Live, has taken that vision and absolutely ran with it. I this past weekend with some of the Christmas celebrations in North Manchester, I was online just looking at some of the pictures that they'd put out. And you have Santa in there with hundreds of people in the Coop, not to mention the success story of what was an idea at first to now see it come to full fruition. Heather's done a fantastic job, and it really is in the heart of downtown North Manchester. Such a unique amenity and so much more than when you hear incubator space. I think a lot of rural communities or communities may have incubator spaces. But if you walk in the Coop, it's a different experience, right? They're real businesses with real owner-operators running their businesses outside of what we called the mini mall concept at the beginning. And so to see what it's become as a community staple is a testament to Heather's leadership and the work that's happened there. It's been really cool to see that come to fruition.
And a brilliant way to approach Main Street work. Alex, you're exactly right, because those shops that you saw that may not have had the ability to operate on their own without the help of the Coop, aids to the shopping experience through the rest of the stops in North Manchester. So it just levels up. It leverages the relationship and then levels up your shopping experience in a community so that you can stop in the Coop and then keep going through the rest of downtown and the outskirts and the other places to shop.
Yeah, it was fun to meet the business owners that night. They were all there, had their goods were out, and just really cool to hear their story, what they're doing. Sometimes it's a kind of a part-time gig for them, right? They've got a full-time job. They haven't really been able to make that leap yet, but this is that good, amazing transition for them to be able to kind of test it out to the public without fully committing. So,
yeah. Well, and it's just lowering the barriers to entry, right? The idea when you started that was it was to address 3 categories of an entrepreneur, right? One being the true, what we all think of when it's a startup entrepreneur, taking their idea and bringing it to life, right? For, again, lower barriers to entry as opposed to owning your own building or paying big rent somewhere, but testing the concept out. The second was a business owner that may have already been in existence and was in downtown North Manchester, but because of COVID or the pandemic, whatever it was, that they had to reduce their size, reduce their operating costs, is the Coop would be a place that would allow them to land, get back on their feet, but maintain that downtown presence. And the third was truly that new business that may be existing in another community but wants to test out the North Manchester market before they went 2 feet in, and allowed them to go 1.5 feet in by being in the coop first, right, to see what the market would be like in North Manchester. And so when you talk to those business owners, or you see the actual businesses that have started or that are operating in the coop, again, Heather's done such a fantastic job, but it's just brought that any idea that we had as a board when that project started is come to fruition. It's been really exciting.
Yeah. So I challenge our listeners, as you're thinking about 2026 and you want to venture out into Wabash County even more, get up to Manchester and try the coop if you haven't.
And that's what this prize package did for Christy Clark. It's another incentive, other than she really enjoys listening to our podcast, to go someplace. She lives close and lives in Wabash County, but to think about, she actually lives in LaGros, but to think about going to another part of our county.
Yeah.
So yeah, LaGros, she loves it.
And then we had the big package, which I'm going to try. Please correct me if I get this wrong.
You've practiced it in the mirror. Here you go. This is your moment.
I've practiced it with the song in my head at the same time, like playing, and it's different.
Sing it.
It's different when you hear it. Our big winner of the Mele Kaliki Maka Big Kahuna prize package was Trisha Haynes from right here in Wabash.
Her handle is hundreds of podcasts. She just constantly is feeding herself. She listens to podcasts all the time. Walks a lot. And she works out too, but she walks a lot. And so podcasts are her jam. And I was really excited to see her win this. She'll probably do something responsible with it, like tire change, and which is cool, right? That's what you can do. But,
One of these days, we're actually going to get a call-in listener through this. That's one of my goals for 2026.
That'll be it. Maybe we'll have a spinoff. Like you can have one of those advice, like Carrie Bradshaw.
Call the
People
hotline.
could call.
Nobody
Yeah,
wants- hotline.
have a hotline.
Nobody wants my advice. No.
We don't know. It could be anonymous. One of the three of us has to take the call. Could be interesting.
So speaking of 2026 and goals, are you one that would set a New Year's resolution or not?
Every January, I try to do something just to test my discipline, right? Something new. Not that I'm committing to long term. It's not like I start it in January and then I quit. It's just something I can do for 31 days that just reminds me that if I had to quit whatever it was, that I still could do it if I needed to. So for this January, I'm doing no eating out unless it's for a business meeting, no alcohol, and no carbs.
That's
So I've been-
Zero. Like fruit even?
No, good carbs are fine.
Oh,
So fruit's
okay.
fine, but no like processed or bad carbs, bread, pastas, etc.
31 days.
31 days, but if I love doing one of them, or if I get used to it, maybe I'll stop doing it. But 31 days, that's it, and just to remind myself that I still can, or to test myself.
How long have you been doing that?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, is this relatively in your adult life?
Adult
Okay.
life. Yeah, since I got out of school. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Professionally, do you try to set goals for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And now it's a little bit different this year, moving into this year, right? I made the transition, what I say, back to the W-2 world in 2025, right? Started the Community Foundation in March. So as now moving into 2026, obviously goals for myself still, professionally and personally, but then for an organization also, right? And so that's been really exciting this time of year to set that up as we move into 26.
Yeah. And Christine, how about you?
I am not a typical New Year's resolution or personal goal setter that starts at the new year. I do have a goal though this year personally. I really want to get through the entire Bible in 1 year, and I've put some tools into place to help me accomplish that. I've tried before, and then I get to those books that are like so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so, and I'm like, oh. But that's been a goal for me for a long time. Professionally, yes, goal setting is critical in my work life for our organization. And so we set goals every year, myself included, and then evaluate them throughout the year. Sometimes goals have to shift or adjust. Absolutely. We set goals and reach for those, and then evaluate back, did we reach them or not? And were they worth, were they the outcome what we expected or hoped they would be too?
Yeah. As a board member on Visit Wabash County, seeing you and the way that you work with your team in setting their goals so that they have something to shoot for that matches up with the organization goals has been so impactful, I think, on them each individually, but then also as the organization moves forward. I don't think I've ever seen it done quite so well as what you do at Visit Wabash County.
Thank you. Thank you. What about you?
Well, I don't set a New Year's resolution, but I do usually have some sort of a big goal that I'm going to shoot for. I'm kind of ashamed to say this year I really don't have anything in mind.
Not like even now I want to do 29029, like, the episode you recorded a couple weeks ago. That nothing like that, nothing adventure-y.
And for our listeners, big goal for Adam, just to put some definition around what that may mean.
Is more than giving up pasta.
Well, I know, right. More than not drinking alcohol for 31 days, giving up pasta. Yeah.
Right.
Correct. I know Christine's going to do an episode in 26 with Adam as a guest to dive a little bit deeper into Adam, both professionally but personally as well, just so that maybe our listeners can look forward to that episode to learning just a little bit more about what a goal is for Adam Stakeman compared to the average everyday person.
Well, it changes. I mean, I'm nearing 50 now, and the body's just not quite what it was.
Did you hear that drag? I'm nearing 50.
When I was 30s and 40s and I would set these goals. I have had one knee surgery in 2025. I'm getting ready to have my second knee surgery in 2025. So I have kind of taken the last year off. I dealt with some pain for too long. And so I'm kind of ready for a reset and to see what that looks like in 2026. I'm still passionate about the stuff I do with my team Triumph, and I'm excited to get out there and do some triathlons with them and maybe do another half marathon. I haven't done one in several years, so we'll see.
He's like, I'm going to take the year slow, a couple triathlons, a couple half marathons. It's like, this is what we're doing. I'm running my first mini half marathon in May, and I'm like, for the last year, I mean, I signed up the day of the mini marathon in 25. I signed up for the 26 mini marathon when I was watching the TV at my dad's, and they were talking about it. I was like, I need to do that. So I signed up that day. I've been thinking about for what will be a year before I do one. And Adam's like, I'm taking 26 off. I'm almost 50. I'm going to only do a couple triathlons, maybe a couple half marathons. It's like, again, just from perspective for the listener.
Yeah. We all start somewhere, though. I mean, you started with your first couch to 5K or whatever it was at some point, and that just became something that really fit you and who you are and became a part of what you really enjoy.
It really did, and it filled in a void in my life at a critical point. And so, I mean, I'm looking forward to sitting down with you and bringing that episode out in 26.
Actually, with both of you, you both are going to be great guests in 2026 for season 2 to learn more. They get highlights and they pick up based on what we do and what type of topics we cover, but there's a lot more to peel back in each of your layers that we're going to expose. We're going to get real.
I don't know if I'm available for my one-on-ones.
That's what I told her.
It's happening.
Well, if we go back a year ago, and I don't know, I mean, this was kind of on our radar, like we were throwing, but I don't know if we envisioned ourselves sitting in this room, in this space, right, with all the cameras and the techie stuff going on. What's the biggest change in 2025 that came about that you weren't expecting, and whether personally, professionally, or the podcast? Alex, I can't imagine that at the beginning of 25, you thought you would be at the Community Foundation. Was that on your radar?
No. I actually decided to apply and submitted within like a 6 or 7 day period at the end of 24.
So that was in 24, okay?
But had no idea where I would be. So 25 for me has been a lot of transition, a lot of change professionally, personally in my life. And Christine and I had lunch today. We were talking just a little bit. For me, you'd mentioned the year that 25 has been for you. And as I think over the last year, it's been the best year of my life, right? And that's, I'm super excited for the future and excited to move through, but I don't know in a single year if there's been more transitions, again, personally and professionally than 25 for me. And to be in a position now to love the balance of it all, right, of both, and in a more balanced spot than I've been in my entire life. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that and fortunate for that. As I think back through, it's a lot of change, but I know I'm exactly where God wants me to be. I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, both, again, professionally and then feel that personally too in my journey through life at this point. So,
yeah. Christine, how about you?
When I look back at 2025 and accomplishments, I don't ever necessarily measure my own professional growth. I feel like it's such a collaborative group effort with the Visit Wabash County team to do our work with such dedication, such commitment, and such purpose that I very rarely take time to look in the rearview mirror to see where we've been unless we've missed something, right? Unless there's been a hiccup or a pothole that we've missed that we have to refine, redirect, and reapproach. But most of the time, it's constantly measuring our successes or our wins, evaluating that data to make sure that we can continue that trend, following the work plans that we've written for ourselves. And so the biggest shakeup, if there was one in 2025 for me, was this podcast. We're always refining our scope of work and making sure that it's polished and it's serving the community the best that it can, whatever we do at Visit Wabash County. Taking on our nonprofit extension, Destination Wabash County, launching this podcast through Destination Wabash County with both of you would be so outside of my realm and traditional ways that we do our work. And then the surprise that came from it is to hear people pour their passions outwardly on each episode, no matter what they're talking about. From Matthew Perky and Micah, to see him and his daughter's dynamic and his true heart shine. He wants to make his family proud. He wants to make sure that they see him, the father, that he is the best that he can be, doing what he says he's going to do, representing, and then, of course, his faith echoing through everything that he does. And so seeing that dynamic was a surprise for me. Hearing Nick Palmer's story, when I thought we were going to talk about an entrepreneur and his hot dog cart, completely to see his growth, his dedication, the times he fell, the times he chose to get back up, his honesty, and when we all fall and then have to get back up again, but his choice to keep getting back up. So there were so many different pieces that surprised me that I got out of this podcast, other than the paper plan of, okay, now we're going to have a deliverable. Every episode, it's going to be something that there's an action item that the listener can take back and they can take and apply. In my mind, that's how I had built it out. I had built it out that after every episode, there was going to be a task list to do. And instead, what's happened is it's just inspired us either to continue the work that we are doing or what could we be doing to contribute or be different or be better or think about things differently.
Yeah.
It's authentic.
It is. That's a great.
The guests are authentic, right? It's allowed us a different platform than what we're treated. You all, from a marketing standpoint, for sure, storytelling standpoint, for sure, but even been a good reminder for me in the work that I get to do every day, just the authentic nature and how fortunate we are in this community to have the leaders that we have, the people that we have that may seem like, okay, this is somebody that has a food truck at a First Friday event, right? Or this is a CEO of a nonprofit organization, or this is somebody that's running an apple orchard or a berry farm, right? To see the authentic genuineness that comes out of them. I'll tell you, Christine, this is a perfect insight for our listeners into how this works, right? When you and I, and then with Adam with this podcast, sit down, like your brain goes to the SOP, the process, what this looks like. And it's that way because you know what the quality you expect from the end product, right? That's what you're committed to. That's what you drive home through and through in your team. And that's why you're positioned to be the best to be able to produce what comes of this, right? To own this content, what comes of it. For me, I'm on the other side of, we'll figure that stuff out, right? I want to highlight the people, the stories that I take for granted every day that our listeners may not know. And I feel like I've beat that drum and say that a lot of times about the guests that I personally get to interview on here. And I know you both feel the same as well, but it's exceeded any expectation that I had when we get to highlight that genuineness of our guests, that authenticity, their passion that they have for their family, for their faith, for their leadership of whatever it is they're involved in. It's a different medium than we get with a blog post, a social media post, right? And I just think if we can continue to find ways to highlight those people in our community that truly allow us to do what we get to do every day and make our community special, that's the game changer that we all envisioned. I just think the parts that you get excited about or get hung up about, the parts that I get excited or hung up about are the opposite, which helps, right?
Balance.
We get to work on something. Yeah. So anyway, not to beat a dead horse, but that's what has been really exciting for me.
Yeah. So if you were to go back and be able to tell yourself on episode 1 that you recorded on your own, give yourself some advice, what would you tell yourself?
I will say I learned this different Lee. I think about this. The John and Lene episode was a huge paradigm shift in the way I approached being what we call the driver, the host of an episode. Just shifted. Going back to what I just mentioned earlier, which was I thought I had to get the person who I was sitting in the chair to hit the points based on the reason I had invited them to be a guest. What I would do differently is kind of keep some of those ballpark ideas of what I would maybe like to see come up in an episode, but relax more and let the guest kind of weave you through. Now, there's a trick to it. There's a trick to landing the plane because you only have so long and you've got to edit out pieces of it. But I would relax more and allow the guest to kind of control the narrative more so than me trying to get the guest to answer the questions or to drive home the point that I wanted the episode to portray, if that makes sense. That's what I would tell myself. Relax.
Relax. And just have that's what I tell.
Let it flow.
When I reach out to people and, adamantly, I started with people that I knew, that I felt comfortable with, that I've looked in the eye before, right? That was felt easier. Now I'm starting to get to people that I don't know personally. But I'm finding that we're having a conversation, right? I'm curious about that person. I'm not trying to get them, like you said, I'm not trying to get them to say a certain thing or touch on a certain point. I'm just curious about that person, their past, what makes them, tick inside and push it forward. And that's been super fun for me. But you have to just kind of relax, forget about the microphone, forget about the cameras, and almost forget about the timeline, because we do have Kim in the background that can cut out and put an episode together in our time, which we're looking at like 45 to, an hour.
Unless you're Senator Zay, and then you go an hour and a half.
He had a lot to cover. It's been a big year for him.
That's right.
Big year.
But you just kind of have to get in and get relaxed and just have a conversation like you're sitting around having coffee with somebody. And honestly, some of the best conversations I've had are like Saturday morning, 8:30 in the morning, we're going to show up here and we're both just getting our day started. And there's no other pressure going on there. You didn't.
It's not a work day.
Yeah, you didn't rush from work to get here. You're just sitting around chatting, and that for me has been really cool. Yeah. How about you, Alex?
See, conversational for sure. I think that's been the best, and that bleeds through in your guys' episode. I would say you're both probably a little bit of a hard critic. It's funny when we have our group text, right? That after we record an episode or after we listen to an episode, like how we did in that episode, and it ends up being completely different than what the rest of us think, right, when we listen to it. So I think there's definitely that piece. But for me, one thing I've tried as I'm asking questions or interviewing is, how do I shed light on, because I've not grown up here, right? And so what I have learned about these people or these organizations or whatever it is they're working on, how do I find a way in a conversation to expose our listeners to that same thing that I fell in love with when I got here, right? Or started working with them on that project? Because, man, we've been so lucky and fortunate. I mean, just to think of a startup podcast. This is Wabash County for our listeners, right? This is something that probably all of our listeners take for granted. And if you could tell your kids one thing, the value of living in a rural community, this would be one of the top things to talk about, right? But this is a brand new podcast. It started in halfway through 2025. And we've had, have either of you been told no from a guest to be on the podcast?
No.
Told flat out no.
No.
And we've had the mayor, we've had nonprofit CEOs, executive directors, leaders, we've had business owners, we've had state legislator, we've had all of these different community leaders that, hey, we just started a podcast. They've not seen the studio. They don't know what the equipment's like. Would you be willing to come on the podcast, tell your story, talk about what makes Wabash County different? And nobody's told us no. That's what makes Wabash County different. As a young person that moved to this community, that's what I've come to appreciate about this community, is people willing to lean in, share, and help those that are willing to put in the time. And this podcast is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. As you look at this podcast, would you generally say that it's been easier or harder than you expected going into it?
I'll start.
Yeah,
this
go
one.
ahead. Yeah.
So for behind the scenes, again, for our listener, when people ask me like, man, that's great that you guys do that, or that's a lot of work, right? You guys do a podcast. In my opinion, the easiest part is showing up and doing this, right? If you know you have episodes, like you all have to catch me sometimes, right? And keep me just on task. Hey, you need to interview, right? And so, but after we schedule the interview, showing up and having a conversation with one of our community leaders, that to me is the easy part. You guys have the hard work. And when I say you guys, right? Like Visit Wabash County, all of the marketing work that you do to promote, Adam, all of the time that you put in also to help promote the podcast, in addition to Kim and Shane and our production company that helps pull it all together, edit the silly things that we say, and make the podcast work. That's the difficult part, right? Or that helps get listener subscribers. That's all by the placement of the podcast. For us, we get to show up and have, for however much time, right, a passionate conversation about a business, a cause, an organization, a person. And that's the easy part.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm really glad that Biz and Brittany did the drawing for our prize package giveaway. Give them a little time in front of let our listeners see them and who's behind some of the videos that are going out on our social media, our podcast cover. I mean, they're behind all of that, touching up show notes. I mean, it takes a lot of people to make this happen. And that's something that I never imagined that it was going to take, 7, 8 people to make this thing possible. I thought we were going to sit around and record on a cell phone and hit a button and it would be out there in the world. Right?
Yeah. Thank goodness for those people who believe in us.
And our sponsors, right? Not to cut you off, Christine.
No, of course.
I'll kick it back over to you. But this wasn't a podcast that we were saying, we have X amount of subscribers, put your name or business out there for that attention. After every episode, when I have this nice fancy reminder from Christine of who I need to remember to thank, right, in the SOP that's right in front of the chair, so hopefully I don't forget. As I go through that list every single time, every single name on that would rather probably not be mentioned. And traditionally with podcasts, right, to a brand new podcast off the ground, getting folks that are willing to buy into that without an agreement of how many viewers, listeners, subscribers, whatever. Again, that's Wabash County. Mm-hmm. This is what we want to do. This is the purpose of what we're trying to do. Would you be willing to invest in that, right? Mm-hmm. And folks rally around that. And that's, put it on the list, right? If you're a listener, something that makes a list of what makes Wabash County different. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I would say it's a mix. I think the podcast piece that we all do is easier than I thought it was going to be. In regard to having these conversations, obviously we knew we would have an endless list of guest opportunities. But like you had said, both of you said, nobody has said, no, I don't want to be a guest. That sounds terrible. Like there's this intrigue. And also I feel as though our guests who are doing that work, doing out there, experiencing these challenges, these adventures even, they feel valued and seen, that they're worthy to be even a guest. A lot of people are almost surprised, like, you really want me to be a guest on your podcast? That part's been easier than I thought. The back end isn't necessarily, there's some hard things like we have all learned when you've taken an entire hour's worth and you take it back to upload it for our producers and there's no sound. And we're like, what did we do wrong, right? Or so we've had those glitches, or the microphone for our guest is too far, or we've got bloopers we've with that of mishaps. A lot of it has just been I'm grateful for the Biz and Brittany, both on my team at Visit Wabash County. They love to learn. And so, yes, it is added probably 5 or 6 hours on top of their already busy, heavy work, wonderful workload. Each week, they have learned something new. And that for them is a sense of accomplishment as well. They've got to understand how to put together highlight reels and shorts and uploading things to YouTube. So I wouldn't say that the hardship has just been in the learning the new and the growing pains. If you listen to our December 2nd episode, I finally got to use some of our sound effect buttons. Some I did well, some were poorly. And so that side has been, some of the growth has been harder. But like you said, having these conversations, sitting in this room that was a storage closet, right? To have our mayor walk alongside and say, oh, yeah, what about this closet? And to see what it looks like today. If you go back clear to the early days, especially on our social media, we have pictures of the studio. before we sat down in here with all of the throw pillows, and it shows it in its best pristine condition.
I remember being in this room and we all thought, okay, yeah, we can see this. We can see this. And then somebody walked out of the first floor of City Hall and closed the door, and it just echoed in this room.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, I don't know. But luckily we were here with our designer at the time and the construction manager. And all right, now we know what we got to do. We got to sound deaden this room so that when somebody leaves City Hall, it doesn't affect us. And so far, I don't think it has.
Even our designer was stoked. This was a first for her as well, and to get the couch in here. Remember that you were here for that, to get the couch in the space. But nobody looked at us like we were crazy. Add that to your list of things. You're doing what in this closet? Even like you said, our contractor was like, I'll blow an extra insulation in this wall. And our designer was like, we'll get soundproof panels and help absorb some of that. So you're right. There's just so many people that
And like
took
your
a
house,
risk.
so many people
Yeah.
took a risk. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
But like your house, way too many throw pillows. If you noticed, like some of us
Kelly, if
discard
you're
all of them.
listening, don't worry.
We
I love
appreciate
them.
it. They look really
They
good.
look really good.
Like your house, like I said, looks
Yeah.
great, not functional.
Sometimes they're great for like taking notes. I know I have some guests that use it almost like
Security blanket.
almost like I've got some that like it right next to them, then they like to lean on it. And I've got others that like to hold it.
We looked back on 2025 and how far we've come in really like 6 months of episodes. I think we're going to finish the season with 31 episodes. So now we go into season 2. We're going to have a full year ahead of us. I challenge our guests to comment on this episode, wherever you're listening, of some, dream really, really big, which is what the team at Visit Wabash County does. Dream really big. What's a guest that if we just, blow our minds, who's a guest we should bring on this podcast in 2026? So I want to know from our listeners.
Yeah.
But Alex, for you, who's like a dream that if like stars aligned, you could have in this room?
In the whole world or just within our county?
No, in the state, the country, the world. Who would you love to sit down? Now, it needs to fit the mission of this podcast.
Okay.
And that we really want, we're trying to promote what's happening right here in kind of Northeast Indiana. Who would you bring on?
Me first?
Go ahead, Alex.
That's a tough question, Adam. For me, I think what I'm really excited about for 2026, we've been in conversations with Nate Spangle, which if anybody's not familiar with Nate, they should look up him and his Get In Indiana podcast and all of his social media. He is really what started as kind of a side hustle has now become his full-time gig of promoting the state of Indiana and all the great things that are going on across the state. Incredible social media following across platforms, but his podcast, the Get In podcast, we are planning on collaborating in 2026 and him hosting, kind of co-hosting an episode that he puts out to his following and his listeners, and then likewise with us on our platform here with the ThriveIN podcast. To hear Nate's story, obviously, and how he got to doing the work that he's doing, but as he travels across the state of Indiana, just an overall what gets him really excited about the work that he does, because if you listen to any of his podcasts, it doesn't matter what he's talking about. He seems incredibly passionate, incredibly excited. But then also to share, frankly, with him a little bit about all of the momentum and exciting things that are going on in Wabash County as we're working towards being a leading rural county in the state of Indiana. And I believe that there's enough people, and this podcast is a testament to that, right? Enough people and things that are going on to position us in that light. And so I'm excited to hear Nate's perspective on that after spending some time here in our community, but then be able to promote that to his listeners as well to hopefully pick up some additional followers for the ThriveIN podcast and folks that'll pay closer attention to Wabash County as they hear or read about it and the things that he'll put out.
I think Nate's a great guest for you. I think I was introduced to Nate's podcast and his socials probably 2 years ago or so. So it was prior to us developing this podcast. And he did some sort of a tailgate, Alex, at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where he had this old pickup truck and he had sponsors and he decaled it. And he was going to be like the first guy in to the infield, right? And then he gave out food and drinks to whoever wanted to come. To see the passion he has for the state of Indiana and what he's been able to develop. Like you said, he went from kind of doing it as a hobby, I would almost say, to this is full-time gig. And I think he's got people on staff now. podcast, his socials, TikTok, all of that stuff. I mean, it's just blown up. That's an amazing example of somebody young, passionate, who's kind of like, just found their own way and figured out how to make it happen.
He's owning Indiana, right? He's owning living here. He's owning the quality of life, quality of place that's here. And I think that aligns so well with what we're continuing every single day to work towards in Wabash County and through this podcast, right? I've said it 100 times, but create more champions every single day for this place and this community and to create the opportunities so that people want to call this place home. I think that what Nate's doing for the state of Indiana lines up really, really well with what we're trying to work towards and do have here in Wabash County, right? It's just shed light on the opportunities that exist and making it cool, as I say, making it cool to live in rural Indiana, specifically Wabash County. I think that's his purpose for why he's dove into what he's doing. And so I'm excited for the opportunity to share that.
Yeah.
He's super high energy.
Oh,
Like the moment his podcast starts, you're enveloped in that emotion, that energy, that excitement for whatever he is talking about. The time just flies by. I don't even know how long each episode is because he is that engulfing and so passionate about whatever he's covering in topic. And he has developed that name for himself because people do enjoy what he's sharing and almost look to him as an expert because he goes into communities and he does really care about seeing Indiana continue to grow and, like us, thrive and do well.
And he's interviewed people from I don't know if it's the owner of the Motor Speedway, business owners, people from inside and outside Indiana. But he's also already interviewed some people from Wabash County. One gentleman who grew up here, now lives down, I think, in Noblesville, runs an excavating, earth-moving company, super successful. But Nate also interviewed the person that I would want to bring on into this podcast in 2026, which is Jansen Kripe of Chills up in Manchester, who, again, young, super energetic, passionate. I'm sure he stumbled and he's had obstacles and just blows through it and keeps a smile on his face. And he's got some like big goals, like he's getting ready to open up his second Chills in Fort Wayne. I would love to have him into this studio sometime in 2026.
He's built a huge following in general especially with the use of TikTok, and has grown his socials. And then I think he's looking at opening a second location as well. His business is already growing.
Oh, I think December 20th was his grand opening.
It's wonderful.
In Fort Wayne.
That's incredible. That whole family has entrepreneurship running through their blood, coursing through their blood.
Yep.
In similar vein to both of you talking about people who have a captive audience who are trying to share the story, locally, we have an online presence. Rocky and Heather France operate a Facebook page called, I want to make sure I say this correctly, it's Wabash Indiana Community and Outreach. Is that the correct?
Crime and Community.
Wabash, Indiana Crime and Community Outreach page.
Their social media presence is close to 15,000 followers, and it has become a place where people engage online about this community that they live in. And so I would love to have them on, talk about where their heart was when they were growing this page, because, you have talked to them in the past, Alex, and I know we've invited them to, it hasn't worked out quite yet, but they have worked really hard to grow their listenership. And people go to that page. Sometimes it's looking for a resource. Sometimes it's looking for answers. And so I would love to have them on, not only so that we can figure ways to collaborate, so the people who are asking some of those questions on their social media know what resources there are available, and how we could leverage that, much like Nate Spangle does and Jansen Kripe does, to share some of these stories outwardly of people who are working really hard to meet the needs of some of the people that are followers on that particular Facebook page. And I just think it would be really interesting to have them on as guests, because they do take it very personally to make sure that serves Wabash and Wabash County authentically and dedicated to making sure that it is a safe space for all, is my understanding. And so I'd love to have that conversation with them.
I think they'd be a great guest to have in the podcast studio. I think what's really cool about their story is that, unlike Nate and Jansen, who they very intentionally went out there to grow an audience, Heather and Rocky, I don't know that they ever envisioned that this is what they were going to be in control of, but they've taken responsibility for it and just they back it up. They're on there constantly supporting and making sure that the correct answers are out there for the public. So, it's just they kind of stepped into that ownership role of such an influential online presence for Wabash County.
And other communities have pages similar to theirs now across the country. And people who are looking maybe at this area for a business or to expand a business, maybe move here, which all of those things are incredibly important to seeing Wabash County continue to thrive, right? And so those pages and that information on there is so critical to some of that decision making. And so if there's a way for us also to have them on and talk about ways to even use that page even more to share some of those stories, I think would be really, really great, because they really do care about their followers and making sure that that page stays true and is open for all to search. 14,000 followers or so, I think, is what they have. That's astronomical. And again, wasn't to build a business, wasn't to sell you something. It truly is because they want it to be a platform to exchange ideas.
And I believe truly, I've talked with Rocky and Heather like we talked about, and they love this community through and through.
They do.
Like we do, right?
They do.
They absolutely love this community, and they want this community to be a place of opportunity for their kids, right? And I'm excited to be able to have them on here to be able to share some of that themselves.
We hope that's our hope episode.
And again, I challenge our listeners, wherever you're listening, YouTube, Spotify, wherever, go in the comments and tell us who you think we should bring on in 2026, or if not 2026, 2027. In addition to that, Christine and her team, they actually have a Google form on the website, on the Visit Wabash County website.
Yep.
And there is a Google form on there, and you can submit, or if you want to be a guest, you can go in there and submit. Really simple, who you are, contact information, and what you want to talk about. I've actually used that. We've had I had a gal that'll probably be coming on in 2026 who has hiked the Appalachian Trail from right here in Wabash County, and looking forward to bringing her on. And that came from the Google form.
And that's also embedded in every single one of our show notes, that Google form is. So anytime you may be thinking of someone we should reach out to, or a correction of maybe something we shared that we misspoke or misstepped, or, our hearts are to reflect and do our best at all times. That's our intention.
I'm curious, do you guys listen to Spotify? And if you do, did you get your 2025 year-end wrap-up where they give you like your top artist, number of minutes you listen, and all that stuff?
I do not.
Alex, do you?
As I'd mentioned, 25 was a big year of transition for me, and I made the transition from Apple Music to listening to music on Spotify, but I've maintained my listenership of podcasts through the iTunes or Apple podcast app is. So I've received my year-end summary for music on Spotify, but not for podcasts.
So, and I don't do Spotify either. I do a lot of podcasts when I'm on the road, or I do XM radio, but I don't do Spotify. So I don't get that year-end recap. Mm-mm. Alex, do you mind sharing like who your artist and all that kind of stuff?
On Spotify?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Well, I'm a massive country music fan, and I think I've talked a little bit about traveling to different concerts kind of on overnight or long weekend type trips that hear country music, and definitely the venues and the Honeywell Center and different avenues that are available nearby as well. But this year was odd. And 2025 was a great year for me in my faith and moving in my faith. And I got my Spotify year-end wrap-up, and 4 of my 5 top listened songs were all Christian kind of music, which was different for me this year. And top artists, I think, were probably still country music artists, but to have that mixed in this year was just a good, as I saw that come through. I think people post those on social media at the end of the year. You kind of just wait and see, because Apple Music does something similar, right? Where you see the year-end summary.
Do?
They do.
I have Amazon Music. I wonder if, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wonder if they do. That's how I use Amazon Music.
Yeah. But it was just reflective of me in this year, just personally, I think, and it was great.
Christine, you had shared with Alex and I in a group chat that on the back end, Spotify pushes information to us about how well our podcast is done. Yeah. I don't think any of us are doing this because we're looking for, fandom, or we think we're taking this podcast global by any means.
We want more than Randy Stakeman to listen to our podcast. That's our goal. If we can get one more than Randy Stakeman, we're winning.
So, we have a mission that we just want to impact the narrative of Wabash County, introduce the regular citizen of Wabash County or people in Northeast Indiana, some of the business owners, the people that are making decisions and pushing Wabash County forward. So when you sent this to us, I was blown away.
You should share some of those stats. I think they're impressive.
So I got to take my readers off because I can't see. A 2025 most shared show, which says we received more shares than 91% of all other new shows in 2025. We've only been out for 6 months. So I think that says a lot. We also received a 2025 talked about show. We received more comments than 96% of all other new podcasts out there. And this one, I don't know, it really hit me that we were a 2025 instant hit show, meaning our debut season was more popular than 91% of all other shows. And that is all due to our listeners.
Yeah.
They have jumped in from day one, shared it, supported us, see us at Kroger or Walmart or walking down the street. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Sending us text messages or, it's so, I mean, it helps me when I come in this studio on a Saturday morning to sit across from a desk, gives me that motivation to do my absolute best because I know there people are listening on the other end and it's making a difference.
It is rewarding to get those texts. Or encouraging texts from our listeners, and we share those around with each other, especially in the early days because we didn't know if anyone but Randy Stakeman was going to listen, which is Adam's dad, if you haven't picked that up. But that is so encouraging when someone sends a message after that Tuesday drop date and they've listened to that newest episode, or they can't wait and they ask, what's next? And so I agree. Thank you to all of those listeners and for sharing the content and commenting on our content and inviting people in. And also we'll give this back to Biz and Brittany. They're the ones that pour into making sure people know it's available. So I would imagine some of these new podcasts launch it and they leave it and they're hoping someone's going to pick it up and retrieve it, which almost sounds like a Sir Mix-a-Lot song there for a minute. But I digress.
Alex, do you know who Sir Mix-a-Lot is?
Yes.
Okay.
But so our marketing team does a great job of making sure that people can pick up what we're putting down, essentially. And then people are picking it up and passing it along. And that is in our heart and that's in our hope, right?
And I think the style that we have here with this podcast is it's different than a lot of others. Mm-hmm. We know that what Alex brings and the guests that he has come into the studio are different than the guests that I bring and the guests that you bring. And then we collaborate occasionally, mm-hmm. right? And so it's okay if you listen to an episode and you're like, I gave it 5 minutes, but that wasn't my interest. That's okay. But when you do find that guest, that episode that really hits home with you and you share it, it means so much to us. So whether you're a business professional or you prefer the episodes that I put out there and you like an outdoor adventure and you're learning new places in Wabash County to go to or inspired to kayak the river because of John and Lene Abnett, man, eat that up and then just, let us know how that impacts your life because that's why we're doing this. We want to make an impact in Wabash County.
We tease about some of our super fans. Alex, if you go back an episode or two, Alex has interviewed one of our super fans. We dubbed Brian Howenstein early on as the president of our fan club, and mainly because he was so generous in sharing his feedback about the podcast, And Leslie Viger, there's so many. I hate to start listing and then we won't ever end, but Leslie Viger is another early listener who wanted to make sure that we all knew that she spends a lot of time on the road too and how much it meant for her to hear these stories. And, she's on fire. We talk about being on fire, right? She's on fire for this county. And so when we hear that feedback and then we see it reflected in those Spotify numbers, those are facts. That's our measuring tool. We think people are enjoying it, but we know, right, compared to other new shows, that people are enjoying it, they're sharing it, and that we're growing at a great rate.
And that's the idea, right, is that those two great examples you just gave of Brian Howenstein and Leslie Viger. Leslie's a realtor here in Wabash County, right? And so she is meeting with people that are considering moving to our community. And so subconsciously or consciously, this podcast is she's in between probably a long, hard day, a lot of showings, all those different things, right? And it's on the road. If she can listen to something and it just, even if she doesn't know it, right, just reignite that spark or that passion she has for this community, that's going to bleed through in her everyday work, right? Brian Howenstein owning the hardware store here in Wabash County. Brian talks to hundreds and thousands of people every year that are coming through the hardware store. And even if they're just existing residents, right? And as he's striking up a conversation, as Brian does, right, with his customers, the opportunity of his passion for this community and the community service he talks about in that interview to bleed through, that's that impact that, again, is hard to try and wrap your arms around. But if we can just contribute that little bit to people here in this community, it's a game changer.
Absolutely, it is. Makes me think of when we went down and we were arm wrestling with Spotify over music rights. And Barry Stroop, who's a colleague of Adam's, is like, "What? Where's the episodes? Like, how am I going to listen to these episodes?" Which is really impressive, too, that people missed us when it was down. We still won. We won that. But it took us about a month.
It did.
Yeah, we were only on YouTube.
And
YouTubes.
My son, another example, he's out on his walk across the country, and he actually refused to listen to any episodes while he was here on his little break because he wanted those to be able to go and listen to while he was walking in the future.
He's the only listener who wants our episodes longer. The only one. I remember him saying that to us. Like, I like listening, but you really need to make them a lot longer. He's the one.
So I want to take this opportunity as we wrap up the year, wrap up season 1, to thank both of you for pushing me outside of my comfort zone, including me in this group of, game changers for Wabash County. Thank you for believing in me, inviting me into this, and here's to 2026.
Cheers to 2026.
We'd be lost without you.
Oh, we'd be broken. We wouldn't know how to fix or repair anything if it weren't for you. And we echo those same sentiments. Absolutely. To both of you, and especially, to you, Adam. This doesn't fall anywhere within your job description on your 9 to 5 or your 7 to 4 or whatever. I know you work at early hours, but it somewhat does fit a little bit more into our professional life easily. So thank you. You share a lot of your extra time and talent too.
I've enjoyed every minute of it. None of this would be possible without our editor, Kim.
We love you, Kim.
And Shane and his team. We've mentioned Biz and Brittany at Visit Wabash County. So many people have just poured into us, whether that, like we mentioned, it's our listeners that just said thank you, give us a thumbs up, give us a pat on the back when we're out in public, or have suggested additional guests. But it's also the people that kind of behind the scenes quietly gave money to Destination Wabash County, that new not-for-profit that Christine mentioned, whether they knew that it was going directly towards a podcast or some other big goal of Destination Wabash County. But those people include the Gilman Investment Fund, Sandra Kunkel Trust, Mark and Amy Ford, Paperworks Industries, the City of Wabash, the Community Foundation of Wabash County, and obviously Visit Wabash County. This podcast would not be possible without any of them and the team at Destination Wabash County as well.
Absolutely. Until we sign some big advertiser like, I don't know, what's a big advertiser? Fritos, Doritos. Those donors make it possible. Your face. What happened? And then you wanted to fix it. You went,
It's not 2026 yet. He's still working on that for 2026.
Practicing.
Until next time, I'm Adam Stakeman.
I'm Alex Downard.
I'm Christine Floor.
And this is ThriveIN Wabash County Podcast.